Hello again. So, we are on the Naval Combat closed beta test. Now this one is a bit different because it's actually realistic battles. As you see, I joined mid-match here. Both my matches are around about 14 minutes long. So I don't get too long in them, but I do get a bit of time to piddle around in them. So first up, we're in the Germans. Didn't mean to actually show the Russian replay first, sorry. So I've talked about these boats already, but in realistic battle they do feel quite a bit different. I really do think they need to set the anti-aircraft gunnery to AI assistance, just because it just feels very hard. Just switch to my first-person camera here. So in this game I actually get some good kill assists. These guns are just wreck in realistic battle. So that was my first kill in this game. I actually went out with torpedoes on him as well. The S-100 is honestly the king of kings at this game mode for the small boats. Because it's got a much better gunnery once you get that rear pom-pom gun on target than PR-183. So, as you see, shots really do feel weighty and punchy in realistic battle. They've also toned down the wave physics as well, so it's not as wavy as it once was. You know, I'm just wary here because I know this guy's going to have torpedoes, so I'm turning into him. Trying to get some shots off, but I'm really getting in trouble here. But we get another kill. So good news, at least I can get my next boat. So I'm not really playing too strategically in this mode, I'm just playing sort of stupidly. One thing that I have heard is that the reload time on torpedoes is broken, and or you don't have spare torpedoes in the S-100, which I do find rather odd. I actually drop my depth charges out there and kill myself. But I managed to set one of the other guys on fire as well, so that's something. So now I'm in the bigger boat, the Z1, the MZ1, and this really does feel different now because you've got those cannons. You sort of can snipe from a much longer range once you get used to the shooting, and they are just devastating. Those things really can just rip shit up. Now, we just got, basically, it's pretty much assists from here on in for killing stuff. From the distance, you just absolutely wreck people. As I said, I really do feel they need to add in AI controllable gun turrets, especially maybe you can assign the AA to be AI controlled for a moment, and then you can take over like you can in aviation combat, because currently there's just too much to do on a ship and you just don't have the wherewithal to constantly keep your eye out for planes, for boats, for other ships, and torpedo. It's just too much. There's just too much going on the screen. But as you see, with realistic mode, it really does make a big difference to your guns. In arcade mode, I was struggling to get any kills whatsoever with these guns. The wave physics have been toned down a fair bit too, which does help a lot of matters. but aiming for that hole really makes a difference now. I think I actually get torpedoed by a plane in this mode. But as you see, it's pretty much just wrecking everything with this gun. The high explosive round is just superb. The Russian gunboat, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be quite as effective with its guns, but it is more effective at taking damage. So you can fire at that thing for days and not do much to it, because the armour takes up pretty much most of the hits. With the high explosive shell, you don't have the penetrative value to get through the armour on that ship. So you basically just have to try and kill all the crew, the deck crew, and keep the deck guns down and stuff like that. And I'm dead. The big disadvantage of the German ship is the lack of crew, of course. You have much less crew compared to the Russian ship, which means you do go down faster in the bigger ships. An MZ1 killed me, of course. And with the German ship, because it has less armour, it's sort of up against itself, it's very even, but up against the Russian ship, it's quite hard to sort of get an overall winner, because the armour of the Russian ship negates the round you're using, but then the round that the Russian ship uses doesn't generally do much to you, because you end up ends up over penetrating most of the time, unless they shoot you through the bow of the ship or the stern of the ship. If they shoot through the side of the ship, it generally over penetrates and doesn't explode unless it hits something like the engine or something critical. So I think that's something that's got to be tweaked a little bit. So I'm just pissing around, really. I'm not looking for kills and for, winning games and stuff. I'm just testing a few things out, mainly. As you see, the actual RP is really easy to rake up in this mode. I don't know if that's because it's in testing at the moment, but you do really just the points, you just clamber straight up there. I'm doing quite well at the moment with 4,000, but it's not, you see a lot of people on 6,000, 7,000 points, as long as I don't play stupidly. So I'm here in the Fokker-Wulf, just testing out strafing on boats, really, seeing how that goes. The bigger Russian sub-chaser there, and get a few criticals on things and little things like that, just firing the cannons at them, because you just take out so much of their crew, basically. So I think a lot of the time it's going to be, some of the higher caliber cannons are going to be quite useful in this mode, because you do penetrate quite a lot of the time, but you're also really great to just destroy the crew. Another bug is actually the German flags and the Russian flags tend to turn into sails, which is kind of weird. You might have just noticed that on the last couple of strafes. Yeah, so that's an interesting bug. But this is in closed beta at the moment, so it's not something that's completely... it's not something that you can go, oh look, this is terrible, what are you doing? So, firing here at the front of this guy's ship, I get a fair few bits of, I get some sort of, a fair few hits on crew members and things like that, so it's interesting in that regard to sort of how aviation is going to work with ships, because it still seems fairly OP when you're using larger bombs, larger caliber bombs. I think maybe introducing the ability to drop depth charges or even mines may be a good idea for this version of combat, because there's a lot of flanking going on. So these guys are flanked around the corner here. So if at the start of the game, say, you could actually drop a group of, say, 8 mines across a crossing, say, it would make that sort of chess aspect of the combat into the game. You could block off 2 or 3 paths of the enemy. You could also drop it across the front of the convoy, say, or something like that, if you were looking to win the game. I'm actually going to speed up because this is a very failed run here. It's been a long time since I've used the the Italian torpedoes. They're pretty bloody awful, and I'm going down, sort of thing, and I drop at 300 meters, pretty flat as you saw. Both torpedoes just drowned. Yeah, they're just, oh god, they're awful to use. I hate those torpedoes so much. So let's just fast forward a little bit here again, and we're back in the HE-111, just because I really wanted to test out aerial torpedoing to see if it is actually viable in the game. I was going to go for the merchant ships, but I wanted to see what would happen against a player ship, for instance. So this is the last little bit of this video for the German aspect side. Realistic battle does feel very different. It does really change up the naval mode and make it much more interesting, I would say. I enjoyed the realistic battle version much more than the arcade battle of the Navy mode. So I'm just going to move my microphone here just because it's tapping my neck. Oh, sorry if I make lots of noise when I'm doing that. So yeah, it's sort of, the RB version is much better, and I think it's going to be more fun. I think once you get things like Japanese and American torpedoes in it from planes, it's really going to change up the game mode, because those things are going to be, I don't like to use the term overpowered, but they're going to be a lot more, they're going to do a lot more damage than you will get from the German, the British, and the Russian torpedoes, which you have to drop at such a slow speed and low altitude, it's just almost impossible. So I think those nations can go more for bombs than anything else. Interestingly, in this mode, I didn't test it out for the Russians, actually, unfortunately, with the IL-4, but the HE-111's only got the 50-kilogram bombs. So I'm coming up on this guy here in this gunboat who's been stationary and firing at people for a while. Low altitude, keep it below 180, and I drop my torpedo out around about 7 kilometers, I think it is. So here we go. So torpedo out, fly straight across him. He's like, bomber, that's weird. As you see, the speed of a torpedo is very slow. The guy up in front actually noticed me, however. This guy just did not have a clue that what was happening. So this guy here noticed and actually turned away before my torpedo could do anything. And I think I get shot down not too quickly, but I will get shot down sort of very soonish. I think the fact he was in a fight with this guy didn't help. I should have probably kept that torpedo and gone for this gunboat over here, although it might have been a harder hit because I've had to drop the torpedo around about here, and the chances are it would skip off the ice. All in all, realistic battle is much more interesting. Okay, let's go to the opposition. So off to the Russian motherland. So as you saw in that game, I got 4 kills and 4 assists to my 5 deaths. So not great game playing by me, but as I said, mainly just testing out things. The main thing though was got more kills than deaths really, so that's something. And as you see, a lot of players got some very high scores as well. So in this game, as I said, I thought it was the Russian version, but obviously things have got... right, I know what's happened. Because they've mixed the teams, that's why I'm confused. Alright, so this is the Russian variant. So again, I've spoken about these ships before, but they do handle very differently when you're in realistic mode. It does feel... the ships are very... not quite as maneuverable, they don't feel as fast. The guns definitely move a lot slower as well. So it's much harder to get on target with your gunning. So, you know, although these things are pretty damn fast little boats, they're sort of... they don't feel as fast as they do in arcade mode, which is something, I guess. I guess another thing as well is, because of the amount of guns you have on these boats as well, it's kind of tricky because you need to sort of set out a new keyboard layout. I found I've been using the 1, 2, 3 keys in naval combat because, you know, you've got so many weapons to fire, it can be really tricky. Sort of, you don't want to be firing them all off at once sometimes, because especially with the big German boat, the cannons essentially are going to be more accurate and require a different can't say it now. A different elevation than the machine guns. So yeah, as I said, the realistic battle mode does feel a little bit... I feel like I'll be playing that more than I would be the arcade mode for sure. As I said, I've not been the greatest fan of the arcade battles in anything really. They're fun now and again, but generally they're just a bit dull for me and don't have the tactical stuff. And that's what I'm talking about with mines and stuff like that. If we had the ability to lay mines, it would be very interesting. Yeah, I really do hope we get something like that implemented in game at some stage, because mine laying would be really interesting. Now, as you see here, this S-100 has just come into my path, firing off torpedoes as well, but I'm getting absolutely wrecked as well by them. So we're trying to keep the bow of the ship towards them, but it's very tricky to get back into this game once you're out. You get wrecked very quickly. I don't think I got any kills in this game. I think they were all assists. But generally, from damage and from sort of damage you can do to people, you generally build up enough points to be able to get the next boat quite quickly in the battle, which is something good, I guess, something that tank battles don't have. Where in Tank RB, if I was in that stage, I probably would have not been able to respawn, but in this mode, you definitely have the chance to respawn, and you can respawn in pretty much anything if you've got enough points for it. So, we're in the Russian sub-chaser now, and again, I find the bomb slash rocket propelled bombs and depth charges aspect of this boat pretty useless. It's a shame that guy didn't have a torpedo in the tube, really, because that would have been a great ammo rack. But as you see, guns feel much more accurate now. you can sort of get good shots on. But because the penetration on this round is so high, you sort of generally can't do much with it, because you're just over-penetrating every single shot. So you make some holes in the in boats for sure, but most of the time you're actually just doing holes rather than big damage numbers, which you are with the high explosive shell variants. But again, as said, because of the armour of this ship, it's very hard to kill with high explosives, so you've got that sort of to look at too. Now, got a hit on the engine there, as you see, and that exploded the shell, and that caused a huge amount of damage to that guy. It took him out. And I'm just making sure he's dead, really. Ammunition's not really anything to worry about in this mode. Like ground forces, you know, where you're sort of worrying about your ammunition count. I've not really seen any detonations in this game other than somebody being detoned from, there we go. You see what I mean about shooting from the front of the ship? Shooting at the front of that ship, the S-100, meant that my shell actually detonated, and it caused damage down the whole of that boat, absolutely wrecking everything down as it went. And that's where this boat comes into its own, but you've got to really have that good shot. If you can hit an engine, you're going to cause horrendous damage. If you can hit something critical, like something that's not going to you're not going to pass straight through, you can really do some decent damage. So again, another assist here. Something I have noticed in this mode is, you know, you could be doing all the damage in the world to an enemy, but you just generally end up with assistances. It's very hard to actually get kills, which can be very frustrating sometimes. Oh, what else to say really in this mode? Again, as I said, I still don't get the depth charge thing, because they just seem pretty pointless. I know people have got kills with them, and you can get a kill with them if you've got a pursuing boat that's like right on your arse, and I mean like about 20 meters away from you. But in that case, generally they've destroyed your engine and you're just sat there anyway, so you can't really do much. The frontal, I'll switch to player view again, sorry. The frontal sort of bomb aspect is pretty hopeless as well. It just really doesn't feel like it's worth doing much with. So we get a good hit on our sub chaser over there with our round, and again, it doesn't explode, it just goes straight through, causing damage to his modules. The best way to sink a ship in this mode is to actually basically go for the hull of the boat and try your best to cause damage to that sort of section. As you see, again, hit the torpedo tube there, and obviously he must have set his torpedoes out, because if he hadn't, that should have been a ammo rack. Hitting the front of the ship again there, taking out most of his frontal crew. Sent his torpedoes out, and unfortunately I've actually eat one here, but because it's sort of on the side of the boat, you see, it doesn't sink me. I'm pretty much crippled in the water here. I'm actually taking on a lot of water and I'm pretty buggered. Now I send out those bombs, trying my best to do something to him, but the best I get is a small minor hit to him, some small damage, and that's mainly from fire anyway. So if I had some at the back, could have used them, but unfortunately the depth charges, you have to use them all at once. You can't prioritise which depth charge you're using, so maybe could be an idea for Gaijin to look at implementing whichever way the camera's pointing is for which way the depth charges go off. Something like that could be very useful, because at the moment you're just depth charges they're just pathetic. There's not much point to them. Now we're actually seeing some good visual damage on the boats now, which is really good. As you see, my lifeboat is actually completely destroyed. There's some serious damage. There's actually a hole in the front of my ship there, which is good. So we've actually got visual representation of damage to the boats now, which is great to see. The old girl's still going, even though it's got a massive hole in the front from that torpedo hit. But pretty much no guns left, and my ship is just dead in the water. So I'm just waiting for somebody to put me out my misery, basically. But with all the assisting I've done and things like that, I've managed to rake up a relatively good score. You know, sort of when you're scoring around 3,000-4,000 points in a game, that's some good lions you can score. So I think naval combat's going to be the new lion farming method in game. Getting some shots off here at the MZ1. Even my sort of AA guns and machine guns are damaging that thing because the armour is so sort of weak on it. His guns are doing some damage to my crew, my deck crew of course. If they catch one of those high explosive rounds to the face, they really do suffer from it, but as I said, it has very hard time penetrating the armour of my ship. It won't be long now, he's going to actually launch torpedoes on me. And put me out of my misery at least. Because at the moment I'm dead in the water, I've got nothing left going for me. So, pretty sure he does torpedoes yet, there they go. And 2 torpedoes. Definitely enough to take out the ship. Torpedoes are really only useful if you're fighting a very slow moving target, or if you're very lucky. They don't hit very often, in all honesty. As I said, this ship is better for... It's almost like a heavy tank. Imagine this like an IS-4 or an IS-3 compared to a... let's try and think of something comparable. Compared to, say, Matilda. So both have what's considered heavy tanks and heavily armoured, but the Matilda's shot is not really going to do much to the IS-3. The IS-3 shot's going to do quite a bit to the Matilda, because that has that higher armour value and also the better gun. But if, say, the IS-3 only had solid shot, then, you know, it would sort of be in role reversal, so it would be like, I'm trying to think of 2 tanks for comparison, but I can't at the moment. No, the Chinook 2. So basically, the German ship, the MZ1, is like a Chinook 2 compared to an IS-3. Yes, you can probably kill the IS-3 with Chinook 2, but you can have a very hard time. Just because the armour is going to absolutely chip away at you, but what you can do is, say, hit its tracks all the time, and then get around it, and maybe do some damage to engines and sort of little bits. It's just annoying stuff generally, but not enough really to kill it. Just enough to keep it immobilised and sort of irritate it most of the time, and then wait for somebody else to come along to actually kill it for you. Whereas with the the IS-3 or the Russian PR-122 BIS, it sort of over-penetrates every single shot, which happens on the Chinese too most of the time because the armor's so thin. So the round goes straight through and the fuse doesn't explode. So it's very frustrating fighting between those two boats because it's like, it's sort of a very big struggle. I'm actually shooting on the cargo ships now just to see how they go. And with this gun, it's very good for the larger ships. Taking on cargo ships and things like that, you really can do some good damage numbers to them. I've not managed to sink them yet from this distance, and I'm not sure, it's very hard to sink them from this distance with guns, just because it's very hard to aim, but I'm sure once we get used to the aiming, I think when Gaijin sort of make it a little bit easier on the aiming mode, we'll have a little bit more opportunity in that respect. I think I'm about to get actually taken out by a torpedo by a plane any second because I'm sort of just focusing completely blindly over on that side of the map, not looking at anything. As you saw there, I shot on the sub chaser. I hit his smokestack and did bugger all, which at least is accurate. So just cruising around really and getting used to it. As I said, RB is much better than arcade for me personally. I find it much more interesting, but I do feel they need to implement a few changes. As I said, I think the AAA gunners need to be able to be switched to AI or not. Maybe you can switch to different gunning positions. So rather than having, or guns you can fire, say, so rather than having, just individual buttons to fire the guns, maybe have the ability to fire all, of course, with one button, but be able to switch to different guns on the fly, rather than firing. I know it's similar to what you say firing them, but what I mean by switching position is, say you switch to how you use gunning mode in aircraft and bombers, of course, is you can switch to gun mode and still fly the plane, but you're actually in a slightly different spot. I think having that ability would be quite good for ships, being able to switch to, say, the main guns. You'd still be in the same position, of course, because that's where your gunnery sergeant is, where your watch officer is. But you just again, getting some very good hits on front on ship again. As I said, firing front on any ship with this thing is going to just destroy them completely, because they just have no defense against it, because that explosive actually manages to go off. But it's still very, just hold down the fire button and just hope and pray you kill somebody. There's no real feel for the combat still, I find. It's still very dated isn't the word, but it sort of, it doesn't feel very initiative driven. You sort of feel very at the hands of what's... You don't feel very in control of everything, let's say that. And I think it's because, there's too much go on at once. Maybe, you know, being able to switch on AI assist mode would make it a lot easier. Even having a course plotting system, something like that. If you've ever played the game Silent Hunter, you'll understand me with the navigation system. Sort of where if you bring up your map, say, you can actually, like, say we brought up, I don't actually have the map of course, but say we brought up the map or even using the mini-map, we could plot the course by clicking on it, just so the ship would follow a set course, so we could concentrate on firing, or vice versa. As I say, it's just very tricky at the moment to sort of get a full, to be able to enjoy it, because it's just too fast-paced is not the word, there's too much you need to do, unfortunately. So yeah, as I say, it's still a tricky one, it's still ongoing work, and I think they're doing good with what they've done. The changes they made definitely did help the game, but I think there needs to be quite a lot more changes in future to make naval combat actually fun, more than just holding down the fire button and praying and spraying, which currently is pretty much all it is. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it useful and informative. I'll catch you again soon. This is Screezilla out for now, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch you later. Bye bye.